So we will start off our webinar by speaking to listening or hearing from Councillor Dr. Yvette Jason. We are very privileged to have you in this webinar. Councillor is a member of the United States Supreme Court Bar. She's also she's also a member of the U.S. Federal District Bar. She is also the board of the Association of Female Lawyers of Liberia. She is also a member of the Liberian Joint Presidential Transition Team, and she's currently the co-chair of the FemWise for Women Mediators of 15 ECOWAS countries. And lastly, what I can say about Councillor Yvette is that she is the initiator of the Women's Situation Room. Councillor, we are very happy to have you, and we would like to hear from you. What is the Women's Situation Room? Please take the floor. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Peace, and it's a pleasure to be here and an honor, first of all, to be having the implementation of the Women's Situation Room in Uganda for the second time. It shows us that the women of Uganda are serious about peace and security and taking it into their own hands in collaboration with the youth. I will do a screen share so that we can go through my presentation. The Women's Situation Room was founded is a process in which women in collaboration with youth lobby and engage all actors and stakeholders to commit to actively preventing all forms of electoral violence in countries where I'm having a feedback. Can everybody mute their mic? To actively prevent all forms of electoral violence in countries where elections are being held in Africa. Our motto is the peace is in our hands, because it truly is. The origins and mandates of the WSR, United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, calls for women's involvement in peace processes and in peace building. The Angie Brooks International Center, ABIC, initiated the concept, which was implemented by Liberian women peace leaders during the Liberian 2011 presidential and legislative elections. Our origins and mandate, we have the African Union GMAC, the Gender is My Agenda campaign in 2012 at the African Union. It was there that it was adopted as the best practice, and the call for the WSR to be replicated in all African countries having elections. The women of GMAC then invited President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia to be the champion of the WSR, and she accepted. And this has serious implications. It gives us reach to every leader in the world that we can bring to bear on what we need done in the WSR. 2011 and October 2017, Senegal in February 2012, Sierra Leone, November 2012 and 2018, Kenya, March 2013, Nigeria, March 2015, Uganda, February 2016, and Ghana, that's the recent one. The work of the WSR, we gave guidance, advice, analysis, and provide rapid response to incidents from the field before, during, and after elections. We use track 2 level diplomacy to ensure key political players are prepared to accept the election results. Lead in mediating and negotiating peace to sustain peace and development in African countries before, during, and after elections. It enhances women's role in peace building in Africa and actualizes UN Security Council Resolution 1325, which affirms women's roles in peace processes and in peace building. I will give you a summary of our essential activities. First of all, there's a national request from women's organization of the host country to ABIC for the implementation of the WSR. And we want you to know that the Women's Situation Room is copywritten. ABIC engagement then is with the host organization and pre-planning, fundraising, and organizing. We set up the secretariat. The women's organization elects the steering committee chaired by the host organization. The steering committee is the one that elects the national eminent women. We then do an assessment and planning mission, the WISE, and the African eminent women are then announced by the Angie Brooks International Center. We then do a launch of the WSR. There are stakeholder engagements, and these are very important. We have, oh gosh, 1 minute, my internet. Okay. We have the Electoral Commission, the security, that is the police and army, the Interreligious Council, political parties and standard bearers, youth, the United Nations and diplomatic missions, judiciary and donors. Then there's the youth peer-to-peer process, which is really essential for the room. We have media engagement and training, media coverage and publicity, that is the eminent women are on television, radio, voices of peace, etc. We set up the physical rooms, and in Uganda, we're going to have 4 regional rooms plus Kampala. Then the summary continues. We have our call center and operations room where we have the secretariat, the steering committee member, analysts, and engagement desks. You have the eminent women room. We have the documentation and reporting. Activities you have here are breakfast meetings that we've had before, as you can see in Nigeria, things for the diplomatic corps, the contact group of a meeting with His Excellency Museveni, the eminent women met in 2016, and also with Dr. Bisaji, the presidential candidate in 2016. This is the one with President Macky Sall, the current president of Senegal, after he won the elections in 2012. And this was very important because Macky Sall, when he was announced as president-elect of Senegal, came into the women's situation room, straight from the podium to the room. And the international journalists asked him, why would you come into this room? You've just been announced as president-elect. And he said, because I know the work of the women's situation room, to know that he had that level of confidence in our ability to produce peace and security in the country. And this is the WSR in Nigeria, the presentation of our youth peace touch during the situation room in Ghana. Now, what you see here is a typical morning briefing session in physical situation room on the situation in the country so that they are aware of what is going on day after day. They are on top of the news in the country. Then, of course, we do a lot of partnership, meeting with the EU, meeting with UN delegation. Yes, Dr. Shambas, the former president of Liberia, youth signing the peace clause, security. But I have to go into the youth peer-to-peer process. The goal of that is to empower young people's transition from perpetrators of violence to ambassador of peace through peer-to-peer peace outreach. We're using that peer-to-peer process in which we train the youth. We have capacity building of the youth through training. We have community outreach through peer awareness, raising community outreach programs before, during, and after elections. And we have the peer process with the youth, because the youth must have ownership. I have ownership of peace in Uganda. Uganda can go to civil disturbances, serious civil disturbances. These young people have that Uganda is their country and that they are in charge of their own peace. They should not be waiting for the police to talk to them about peace. They should be waiting for the military to instill peace. Peace should be report incidents as they're reported from the field to the center via toll-free number. They are also working shifts to ensure calls are received 24/7 and reports are sent to the eminent women to resolve. The youth are also our data entry clerks. They are election observers, that is the women, and they serve in other capacities as and when needed. So you have pictures here of call operators in Uganda, the toll-free number the last time in Uganda, the visitation of President Obasanjo of Nigeria to the call center in WSR Uganda at the last Ugandan elections. And you have the data entry clerks in Kenya. Now, let me stop there. These are some of our best practices, but we can get to that later. Let me see. Okay. I just want to say it is so important that when it comes down to the Women's Situation Room, that people understand that the women of Africa have to be in charge of their own peace and security. Because when there's war, when there's civil disturbances, it's the women of Africa that will suffer in our countries. So we have to be in charge of it in collaboration with these young people, because it's these young people who are targeted by politicians. It is they are the ones that are going to cause the civil disturbances. And if we don't pay attention to them, if we don't pay attention to their needs, we are going to continuously have problems in Africa. The Women's Situation Room has been acknowledged by the United Nations Security Council as one of the best practices in peace and security in the world. And I think that is a big, that's a big award and the commitment to change our practices when it comes to elections. We must understand that the Situation Room uses elections as an entry point in dealing with peace and security. However, we are a neutral, non-partisan organization. This mechanism is a complete mechanism, is not just a room. It culminates into a physical room. However, it's a peace mechanism that's a continuum that uses the elections as an entry point, but that deal with peace and security in our countries before, during, and after elections. Example being Uganda. In the 2016 elections in Uganda, at the close of the elections, we looked at it, we did an analysis, and we found out that there was a need for a national dialogue in Uganda to handle some of the outstanding questions that were raising such concerns on the ground during elections, and that were really flashpoints for violence. So we then engaged both parties, the major parties. That is, we engaged the government and we engaged the FD. We feel there should be a national dialogue. This was also your interreligious council, etc., then joined us at some point, and we started the national dialogue. This process has been going on since 2016 and still has not ended. So I just want to say that we must understand that peace doesn't stop because elections stop, that women continue to work. Another example is our work in Ghana. We continue to work in Ghana. We just had another gang summit in Ghana in which the initiator of the women's the champion of the Women's Situation Room, Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, attended that gang summit in Ghana. Of the 16 regions of Ghana, we had all leaders of the gangs there to have a commitment to peace. So these are just some of the things that the Women's Situation Room does. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yvette, for your very informative presentation. I think it gives us a very good understanding of the Women's Situation Room. You took us through the different work that the Women's Situation Room has been doing in the different countries. And then you mentioned some of the mechanisms that is being used, like working with the youth, working with the eminent women, working with the women peace advocates. And then also you say something so strongly that the African women should be in charge of their peace, because it is our responsibility. That is something very, very important. Thank you very much for your great presentation. And we will go right straight to our next speaker. You talked about the eminent women, and we have some of the eminent women in the panel, which is very, very important. And we will go right straight to our next speaker, who is Judith Kamai. Judith is a social development governance and gender equality specialist who has worked with the public, private, and non-profit sector. She's been instrumental in mainstreaming gender in the peace support operations of the African Union and African Union Peace and Security Architecture, and coordinating a multi-stakeholder joint program on gender equality. And what she has been doing has been included in several UN agency, governments, and civil society organizations. Judy is also an eminent woman of the Women's Situation Room 2021. Judy, would like to hear from you. We're talking about peace and we're talking about violence. What are some of the causes of violence in Uganda, and what are some of the effective measures that we can take or that we can use to prevent this violence? Please take the floor, Judy. You're most welcome. Judy, you are muted. Please, you can unmute.
Thank you, please, for introducing me and also for allowing us to discuss this very important question. And good morning to everybody who's listening in. So the question is, what are the likely causes and possible prevention measures in electoral violence? Now, before I answer that question, I think it's important that we unpack violence itself, because it manifests itself in different forms. So the forms of violence that we see, and this is historical, we've seen it in past elections, is physical violence. This is more visible. We see it in the print media, we see it on television. Then there's also emotional and psychological violence. This is not visible, but I'll come back to this. And then there's also sexual violence. Now, looking at those forms of violence, we need to know that they impact individuals differently. So for example, if I pick up sexual violence, manifestations of that are, for example, sexual harassment of women and gender-based violence. And these are things that actually happen during elections. And there's been evidence that we see an escalation around these forms of violence. Now then, you'll probably then ask again, what are the causes of violence? The causes are mainly systemic and they're structural. And this is something that therefore requires a long-term intervention. So let me pick up just one example of a type of violence, intimidation. You ask yourself a question, why is an individual intimidating another individual? Then another example of violence is incitement. And we've seen examples of this. Why does an individual decide to incite others into violence? Another type of violence that we see is hate speech. Why does a person wake up in the morning and decide to spew hate? Via for example, the social media. So the very big question that we have in front of us is, why is all of this actually happening? And I would like to suggest that this is happening because of two things, but I think there are two key things that are happening in our society that are manifesting themselves during electoral processes. The first one is that you find that we have a deficit in trust. There is trust deficit. This trust deficit manifests itself at the systems level, it manifests itself at the interpersonal level, and it also manifests itself at the community level. That is one example. Then another deficit that we see is around civility deficit. Now, permit me to use my own local language. The nearest to that is that there is lack of ubuntu. We are all familiar with the concept of Ubuntu, which originated in Southern Africa during the liberation struggles. But if you go to every single African society, there are elements of this. And here, for example, in the area where I come from, we have a deficit of Ubuntu Blam. Somehow this has been thrown out of the window. So you'll find there's a deficit of that, again, at the systems level, at the community level. So then when it comes to possible prevention measures, the prevention measures are long-term. So there's nothing that can immediately prevent electoral violence in certain instances, because many of the problems that we see out in society are long-term and therefore need long-term solutions. So then if you're looking for prevention measures and specifically looking at the trust deficit that we have in our society today, I think it's very important that as a country, we establish what I'm calling pressure valves. Pressure valves in our society that then will enable the people, especially the youth. The previous speaker, Councillor Chesson, talked about the youth. The youth are in the majority in Uganda. There's no denying of that. And we've gotten to a time where we need to accommodate them by providing them with platforms for them to come forth and vent their frustrations, vent their anger, share their concerns, share their hopes, share their dreams, share their plans in this particular context that we are in. So then for me, it becomes very important to formalize what I'm calling intergenerational dialogue. The previous speaker talked about the national dialogue. Yes, it's very good, but I think we also need another mechanism, an intergenerational dialogue platform that is decentralized, is nearer to the people, nearer to the youth where they are, so that they have platforms where they can come and share their frustrations, share their anger long before we actually get to election day. Our colleagues in America call them town halls. We used to have what we used to call Elimeza. They're no longer happening. But then we can have sub-county halls where, for example, the youth can be invited to come and share what they think their future should be all about. So that for me those are the two preventive measures. Then when we go to to address the issue of the civility deficit, for a long time we all know that we've been talking about civic instruction, commonly referred to as civic education. But I've decided to call it more civic instruction, so that we know that it's not only government that is responsible for that we are all responsible for civic instruction. And the core component under civic instruction is rights and responsibilities, a combination of both. Because what is happening right now is that most individuals in our country are demanding for their rights, but many of us forget that rights go with responsibilities, and that is what needs to be constantly put out there for that, so that the people, especially the youth know that yes, they have their rights, but they also have responsibilities. Then again, to address the civility deficit, we need to go back to re-establish value systems. It's something that you find in every single society here in Uganda, but somehow this is something that is not being given the attention that it requires. Issues of integrity, issues of compassion, issues of tolerance, we're seeing a lot of intolerance in our society right now. Issues of self-control. There's a lot of lack of self-control, and hence the violence that we are actually seeing. So if we can invest more in civic instruction and also reestablishing value systems, then perhaps by the time we actually get to election day, we will see violence being reduced. There are no quick fixes, no quick measures to prevent violence during election. It is long term, and it's something that needs to be done continuously. I would want to conclude with something that can be done even as we speak right now, because we are only about 16 days away from election. Peace messaging on all platforms and in all social engagements. Peace messages by opinion leaders, by religious leaders, by politicians, by the private sector, by women, everybody, just preaching the gospel of peace. If we do that, then perhaps the likely causes of electoral violence may be prevented.
Thank you very much, Judy. You have really given us a very informative presentation on how on the violence, the different violence that we have that are happening, and how we can solve them. Thank you very much. I think this helps us a lot to understand what is our current situation and what happens, and how this can, you said it affects us differently, which is really true. And then you also mentioned, you really emphasize that we should work with the youth. And also you say that these are not, we cannot have quick measures to prevent violence, but rather long-term measures. And also you talk about the civic instruction, that you say that it's not the role of the government only, but all of us, it's our responsibility, you know, to engage and ensure that there's civic instruction. Thank you very much. And also I would like to inform our dear participants that use the Q&A to put in your questions. We will have time to respond to your questions, and also still use the chat to put your comments. We will go straight to our third speaker, who is Margaret Sekanya. Margaret is a human rights lawyer, and she is the founder and the current executive director of the Human Rights Center, Uganda. She has worked in over 45 countries on the issue of human rights, engaging with political personalities and international agencies like the Human Rights Council. She has also worked as the chairperson of the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Margaret is also the eminent woman of the Women's Situation Room 2021. We are very happy to have you, Margaret. And with your background and experience in human rights, we would like to hear from you what are some of the existing measures and legal frameworks that Uganda can use to ensure that we have peace. Margaret, please take on the mic. You're welcome. Margaret, you are muted. Please unmute your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we do.
Thank you very much for organizing this. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I was off for a while. And I don't know what you told people. My topic is the legal measures and framework for preventing violence in electoral processes. How can we prevent violence? What is the legal, what are the legal measures and the legal framework? Here in Uganda, we talk about our constitution. The constitution is the supreme law of the land. and everyone tries to understand. A lot of efforts are made to ensure that people really understand the importance of having a constitution. The constitution is supported by electoral laws, which are passed by Parliament from time to time. But I shall also talk about the Electoral Commission and its role, and the electoral dispute resolution. At the international level, we have the concept of free and fair elections. We have standards at the international level where our laws must comply at that international level to ensure that we are moving not only in Uganda, but at the international level. So we have international standards, we have regional standards, and we have national standards. At the international level, we have different laws. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the ICCPR, which is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. We have the International Convention on Elimination of all forms of discrimination. We have various laws which help us to really cope and be able to say we are at the international level. And then at the regional level, we have something like the African Charter on Democracy and Elections. And we have the AU Declaration on Principles of Governance and Democratic Elections in Africa. All those help us to see at what level are we when we are talking about our legal system in the country. Usual elections must be transparent, so it's all these legal instruments which help us to ensure that we are measuring at that level. So we must be transparent even with our laws as we pass them. There are also dispute resolution mechanisms. As we do the voter education, there is issue of access to media, freedom of assembly and association, and freedom to access information, civic education and voter education to avert violence. And in this, we must have early warning mechanisms if we are to be able to measure ourselves. We look at ourselves and say, what are the early warning mechanisms? Although we have all these laws at the international level, at the regional level, at the national level, what are the early warning mechanisms for averting violence? We also must talk about freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, and we must ensure that as we carry on elections, we must ensure that the people who are participating in the election have these rights. And it's also important that the Electoral Commission must be independent, and the public must also take it as an independent institution. When we talk about dispute resolution, then we must talk about a level playing field. Does the Electoral Commission offer a level playing field to all the candidates? Are all those laws applicable equally to everybody? And then when we talk about the Electoral Commission, we talk about the security of tenure of the commissioners. The elections must be transparent, periodical, and genuine, and also no discrimination on whatever basis. That's why we have the different laws which govern elections. we must also allow observers to attend the elections and be able to monitor and come out with these issues. So if we do that, then we need a code of conduct for political parties. We need a code of conduct for the media. And in this, civil society also plays a big part in monitoring the elections. The other aspect is, as we talk about our legal framework and the institutions, is commercialization of elections. And this also brings conflict between parties. Failure to address the issues of violence. And you find that if there is a conflict and they have not resolved it, then it will culminate into violence. So the medium for dispute resolution must exist. Other institutions of importance will be the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Security agencies have played a big role in these elections. Religious leaders, civil society, international monitors, and the United Nations. All these play a big role in the institutional framework and also in the legal framework. When we want to mitigate violence, we would like to talk about the courts of law, but the courts of law usually come in as a last resort. We must have an electoral commission which must be able to resolve conflicts. We must have an electoral commission which is independent. We must have an electoral commission which is funded well, and all processes which it does have to go on in a transparent manner. For example, voter registration, the polling processes, then the public perception of the Electoral Commission, when these things are done well, will be helping to ensure that there is no violence. The electoral dispute resolution, the EC can facilitate this. And we wanted to see, is this happening? Is the EC coming in to solve disputes at the voter level, voter registration level, at the campaign level, when people are exercising their freedom of assembly and association? And we want to see whether the EC can facilitate this rather than waiting for disputes and violence to erupt. The validity of electoral results has always been a matter of dispute. When the EC is carrying out all these activities, at the end of it all, it's the electoral results. Are they accepted by everyone, or can they actually lead to issues of violence? So really, we have the laws at the international level, at the regional level, at the national level. We have then the framework, and we have the Electoral Commission and other institutions like the security agencies, the media, the monitors, the Uganda Human Rights Commission. All these play a big role in our elections, and all these play a big role in averting violence. As a recommendation, I want to say that we must have sufficient time for all stages of election. When we go for nomination, there must be enough time for campaign, voting, counting of votes, rights of candidates, citizens to be voted for, persons of their choice, level playing field, atmosphere free from intimidation, bribery, violence, coercion, anything to subvert the will of the people. The secrecy of the ballot is important. Accuracy of counting and announcing results in a timely manner. This can cause election violence if the elections are not communicated in a timely and good time. Transparency. Judy talked about issues of transparency, issues of trust. These are very important. Transparency of government institutions, transparency of the Electoral Commission would be one of the things which will be taken into account when coming to the conclusion of an election. The forum for political parties to engage in dialogue. Here in Uganda, we have IPOD. Can the political parties engage? Can they talk about the issues and not be able to argue over issues which could be solved inter-party? So in conclusion, I want to say that the Electoral Commission is guided by laws at the international level, at the regional level, at the national level, but also that they must be transparent, they must be trusted, there must be dialogue, and people are passionate about elections, and they observe and they know if there is no transparency, they will know, and that can cause violence. To avert it, all these issues must be followed. We must follow the laws, we must follow the frameworks which are there, we must be assisted by the different institutions, we should have the monitors around, and I see that the Women's Situation Room is one of the avenues which is also helping to avert violence, to help in the processes of ensuring that these things take place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Thank you for your very elaborate presentation. You took us through different legal frameworks that exist at the international level, at the continental level, like the African Charter on the Democracy of Election, and what we have in Uganda, for instance, the Constitution of Uganda. Thank you very much. And also you mentioned some of the stakeholders that should be involved for us to avert violence. You also talk about the EC being independent and providing a flat ground for all the candidates, and also being able to resolve conflicts. You also talk about some of the causes of conflict, like commercialization of the elections, and also you talk about that they need to have a code of conduct. You talk about so many things that I cannot say them again, but thank you very much. The questions are coming in, and please keep them coming. We will go on for just maybe 10 minutes and open the floor. I would like to go back to Councillor Yvette so that we can hear a little bit. We also have a question that has come in from Angela. She's asking Councillor Yvette that how has Ghana met the needs of the youth? And as you respond to this question, I would also want you to give us some of the experiences that Uganda Women's Situation Room had in 2016, or also some of the experiences that other countries have had that you think can be very important in the conversation that we are having now, or as Uganda is going through elections. How can these experiences help us now? Councillor Yvette, you may take the mic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peace. As to how the WSR has helped the youth in Ghana, one thing that it's done is to make sure that the youth, and we're talking about the unemployed youth, the unemployable youth as well, and those who have minimum employability in their countries. And these youth who are in the ghettos and are disenfranchised and are the real source of which the politicians go to cause disruption in elections. These young people have been touched by the Women's Situation Room. They have been recruited by us to have peace in their countries. So the way in which we've done that, we've done peer-to-peer processes in Ghana to make sure that they understand that they have to achieve having the peace of Ghana in their hands. And I will tell you what happened. Let me give you concrete examples. We just did, like I told you, our second gang summit. The first one in the world was done by the Women's Situation Room in Ghana in 2016. We just did the second one, the Gang Summit for Electoral Violence. And this was also done in Ghana. And as I told you, Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf attended that summit. But right after that summit, we did the exit interview, where we meet all the gangs again and say, all right, why did you join the Women's Situation Room again? Why did you even bother? You know, we know you all have all your different things going on. Why did you join the room? And a young man came up in this exit interview and he said, I want you to know something. Just last night, the politicians came because, let me digress a minute. What is happening in Ghana is the NDC and the NPP are still at it. Mahama's party is not accepting that Akufo-Addo has won. And so they still are having problems. Anyway, this goes to accepting of election results. So the youth then says to me, just last night, the politicians came into the ghettos to recruit us. And they came with the money, just like you said. And we took the money. He said, Councillor, I want you to know we took the money. But we did not go out, just like you said. Take the money, but don't go out. The children are in the United States, they're in the UK. If they want people to go and be disruptive, let the children come and be in the forefront. Why should you be killed and shot just for somebody to sit in a political seat for 4 years or whatever the terms of years are? So this young man then repeats this. And he said, I turned to the rest of the members of my gang and I told them, we are not going out. We have the money, just like Councillor said, we just go home. Let them bring their children and we'll follow their children. So he said the majority of his gang did just that, but 2 members of his gang did not. They went out. He said when they went out, they got arrested. So I asked him, I said, oh, they're arrested? He said, yes, they're in jail right now, you know, for this disruptive behavior. So I said, okay, are you going now to take them out? What are you going to do to help them? He said nothing. They were all at the meeting you held. And I want to say that we hold these meetings in the ghetto. We don't hold them in hotels and different places. We have a period of time for 7 days where we bring the gang leaders into the situation room at the hotel where the eminent women are so that we can operate very quickly. But however, majority of our work, our peer-to-peer processing, etc., is always done, the youth are. And this makes sense. It empowers them, it lets them know that it can be done at in that space. So I just wanted you to know that we continue to empower them. And what has happened also in Liberia with our gangs in Liberia, we've started a project that the women are not just to come in there and talk about peace and get these kids hooked up and let them realize they're part of the national fabric, and then all of a sudden we disappear and we don't come back again for another 4 years. We don't want that. We want the peace process and ongoing mediation exercise with the youth. Another important aspect of that is the economic empowerment of these young people. Just like Judith said in her presentation, we have to sit down and listen to these young people. We really do. If we're serious about peace, if we're just going to be doing fluff at the top, that's a different matter than do your fluff at the top. But if we're serious about peace, and we as women have to be serious about peace because it adversely affects us. So if we're serious about peace, we must engage these young people. And we must engage them and realize that the economic opportunities for them to get out of the ghettos are very limited, and try to find ways in which they can do this. So we started a pilot project in Liberia, which we call the slumpreneurs, that is entrepreneurs in the slum. And this is something that we hope that we are going to be able to then replicate it as we go along as part of the situation room to give these children economic opportunities. But what happens is they have to be competitive to be a part of that slumlionnaire. They have to show a change in their atmosphere, in their community, and bring in business opportunities that they think will make a change. And it's a competitive process, and then they are awarded the Slumlionnaire Award, which will help them establish that business. So eventually, that is one of the things that a Women's Situation Room is going to be doing as we go along. We just started the pilot in Liberia, and we hope to replicate it as we go along. There are real issues on the ground with the, let me give you an example of Uganda in 2016. People need to really understand that the Women's Situation Room is very deadly serious. When we sit down for those 7 days, when we physically sit, and we have with the National Eminent Women, and you have both Margaret and Judy who are members, who are National Eminent Women, they will be joined by the International Eminent Women. The heavyweights like Dr. Mary Chenere Hesse of Ghana, and the advisor to the President of Ghana, the first woman, the highest ranking woman in the United Nations. She was deputy head of the International Labour Organization, headquarters in Geneva. You have also Dr. Akwia Kwenye, who was a judge at the ICC. These are women that are coming to join them. Dr. Frances Johnson Allison, who for Liberia was Chief Justice of Liberia. She was head of NEC. She was Minister of Justice. She was Minister of Commerce. So they are going to be joined by these type of women who have international reach and can support them in what they're doing to get to see that violence in Uganda doesn't happen or is at least mitigated. Now, I'll give you an example of WSR in 2016 and how women interacted. And to let you know how important it is that we have a 24-hour room, which we do. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, a call comes in the room. A call comes into our call center. And you must realize our call center is not limited to our observers. The call center is for the whole of Uganda. Anybody and everybody can call on that call center, and that is an important thing. So the call comes in on the call center from just an ordinary person in Uganda to say that a Hilton hotel, which was being built at the time, there was stuffing of ballot boxes there, active stuffing of ballot boxes, which of course went to the disruption of the electoral process. Now it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Who are we going to turn to make a verification that there is no stuffing or that there is stuffing and it needs to stop? The first thing is if you call the Elections Commission, the caller is going to say, oh, what do you expect them to say? If you call the police, the caller is going to say, what do you expect them to say? So the only resolution is that the women, the eminent women, must go into action. At 2 a.m. in the morning, okay, we send out Reverend Kenna Diana Nkisa, who is still an eminent woman even in 2020. And she goes out with some other eminent women, and they go to that Hilton hotel that's under construction, get entree into the hotel and go floor to floor. Can you imagine, while it's under construction, going floor to floor to be sure that whether or not there was stuffing in ballot boxes. They did the entire, I think there are 200 rooms. They went through every room and there was no one there and there was no stuffing. But she could come back and credibly say to us, there's no one in the hotel, we didn't see any stuffing of ballot boxes. We're then able to convey it to the caller who was satisfied with that, okay? But again, it shows the action that women have to take and the action that the eminent women in the Situation Room are willing to go to the extreme to ensure that the electoral process is not disrupted in Uganda or anywhere else where we are. So that's just to give you an example of that. We've had the eminent women in all kinds of situations. In Sierra Leone, we had a situation where the eminent women, there was such a huge disruption at an electoral poll, and it was being done by one of the president's security guard. And to the point that the NEC employees were terrified. I mean, terrified, they were all women. And they were so scared of this man. We sent in the eminent women with our T-shirts. And while they were not looking, we just put our T-shirts on these eminent women and were able, on these NEC employees. And so when they turned, all they saw were the women's situation room, and they figured they better not touch us because we were so credible. And we just told them, you just walk softly and slowly and let's get out. And we got that entire polling staff out of there. They were all women. So we intervene a lot in security issues. We intervene in things that are very risky, but you have to be courageous if you're going to do the work of peace and security. And that's what the eminent women do. It's because they have to realize that this is their country. This is the legacy they're leaving for the next generation, to know that peace and security is all of our business. It's not one person's business. And for us who are African eminent women, it is important that what happens in Uganda happens in Liberia. Because if Uganda can become a shining star in peace and security, Liberia can follow it, and so can other countries. So it's important that we see each other as sister states and as supportive to each other. So that is the reason you have this interest by the African eminent women in what goes on in Uganda. Because if Uganda falls, Liberia falls. Let's remember we are part of the African Union and we should be supporting each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yvette. That is the examples you give really open up our eyes, and thank you very much for giving us all these examples and the different situation rooms and what you have done, and the example you give with Reverend Diana Kesiga and what happened and how you engage with the gang groups. I thank you so much for the work that you have been doing as Women's Situation Room. We have so many comments coming in. We have so many questions coming in, and we will give you a chance to take the mic. But maybe we can take, Judith Kamai, you can take some of the questions that we can see in the chat. Many people are very happy about the conversation. It is informing them, and they are putting in comments. We have comments from Betty team. We have Julia Boom, who are thanking you all for the presentation, and also they are agreeing with you that yes, violence needs to be averted. Judith, someone is asking that you said that there are no quick fixes to violence during elections, and I entirely agree. You talked about peaceful messaging and by different stakeholders. How will this work when the person at the helm of this country is churning out reckless, irresponsible statements? We also have another question that I would like to read to you before you take. Someone is asking you, Judith, that kindly explain what the root problems are that are evident as symptoms if hate speech, incitement, and intimidation. How did we get here? This could guide the peace process. Judith, you can take the mic.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are very important questions. How did we get here? And the first question was the root causes of intimidation. Each one of us, if we look back in our lives, we've come across bullies, people who tend to bully others. And you ask yourself the question, why are they bullying? For me, I think people bully or they intimidate because they want to control. And elections are incidents for contestation for power, contestation for access to resources. So if we have that at the back of our minds, then we can understand why an individual then decides to intimidate others. That particular person wants to control, so then you either support them or you don't, for example, contest with them in an election. Another important question, root causes of hate speech. This is something that seems to be kind of snowballing, but again, it goes back again to issues of access to power, access to resources. So then we hear now more us versus them. Diversity. That person looks different from me. That person is more wealthy than I am. That person has access to jobs, to opportunities, etc. So then that then again is one of the root causes of hate speech. Then a root causes of incitement. Again, it mainly revolves around power and access to resources. So for example, like when Margaret talked about the monetization of elections, unfortunately, not only elections being monetized, but having a position of power is seen as a source of income. So then people then get involved in inciting others so that they end up coming up as winners. And then the second question around peace messaging and what is being seen at the national level in terms of language, which is not palatable. My only response is that I think the national dialogue needs to be revitalized so that the political actors from the various political parties sit and they have honest and open conversations on what is acceptable during elections if we are going to have peace. And that for me also should not be confined to political parties. I think we need this particular discussion because we also see other leaders also using languages that is not conducive to peace. So those are my quick responses to those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy, for responding to those questions. These are very key questions and key comments that we are receiving. I would like to go to one of the questions that we have that is directed to Margaret Sekaja. It's asking how can violence be averted with the available information currently flooding our social media platforms in Uganda. Margaret, please take on the mic and respond to this question. Thank you.
Yes, violence can be averted, but we have social media and people are sending in all sorts of messages. I think one of the ways we can do that is to ensure that we do more civic education. As we talked about personal responsibility, how can we have a community, how can we have a population which is responsible, which can take elections seriously, so that even when there is any message on social media, the people who are reading it can be able to judge for themselves what's right and wrong. Social media is a mode of communication. We cannot stop it, but we want people to be more responsible and people to be mindful of the harm it can cause sometimes. But this, we go through civic education, voter education, going through talking to the youth by different people, the institutions which I named above, being able to carry out their role and being able to actually come up and be able to convince people that elections are important and we should take them as important issues and therefore not misuse the social media. If it's used well, it's a very good mode of transmission of information.
Thank you very much, Margaret. And I think now we will open up the floor for anyone who wants to ask their questions or leave a comment. We have been speaking, only us. I think it's nice that we hear from you as well. So please raise your hand or you can take up the mic, please, and we can hear from you. We would like to hear more from you as well. And as we wait, our dear panelists, if you still have something that you want to put across, you can still take the mic and do it. Angela is saying in the chat that I agree with Judy Kamani regarding encouraging dialogue. People need to speak out to the youth. People need to speak out. The youth have urgent needs. Thank you for sharing. Sarah, would you like to take the mic, please? Sarah says in the chat that thank you to the panelists for the insightful presentation. We need to also include urban refugees in the peace building processes as they stay in the settlement places in Uganda. As they stay in the settlement places in Uganda that are known for election violence when it breaks out in Uganda. Thank you very much, Sarah. That's a very key point that you bring out. We're waiting for anyone who would like to take the mic, and still our dear panelists can still say something if they have any comment, or if you want to add on something as we wait for our participants to use the floor as well.
Okay, if I can say something. Peace, if I can add something. I want to go back to the forms of violence that I elaborated on: physical, emotional, and sexual. The immediate actions that can be taken to prevent this, of course, is raising awareness of the public, not only on the forms of violence, but the response mechanisms that are in place. Like I said earlier, that during elections, we normally tend to see a rise in this in violence, whether it's physical, emotional, or sexual. So then the public, the mitigating measures that are in place is for them then to come out and speak about these injustices that are taking place, and then seeking the necessary response and the support from the various structures that we have in place. For example, going to the health facilities, reporting to police, going through the justice system to secure justice. But I go back to the fact that we need to really do more around raising people's awarenesses, how to not only stop abusing the rights of others through violence, but also what actions that they can take even during the electoral process.
Thank you very much, Judy. And also we have some more comments in the chat. Someone is thanking us for the platform, and goes on to say that Angela goes on to say that, however, I need to see solutions for the mental health question. The emotional toll because of COVID-19 and the election-related violence are real. And then Judith says, panelists, you can unpack more on how we can demonstrate peace during electoral process actions to take. Dear panelists, if anyone would like to unpack more, we still have some minutes. We still have some minutes that we could use to unpack.
Please, can you kindly repeat that last question? I didn't hear it very well.
Okay, Judith Ruth is saying that panelists, can you unpack more on how we can demonstrate peace during election process? Then he adds on actions to take.
Coordinate, okay.
Councillor Beth, would you like to take it?
You're frozen.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. In how to demonstrate peace during elections and actions to take, I think the demonstration of peace during elections is when things erupt. You have, just like Judy has said, there are pressure valves in society, even in Uganda, that people may not even be aware of. Whether it is calling the Human Rights Commission, whether it is going to IPOD, or whatever else. These are areas that you can go to or talk to people about these things that will take some actions. The great thing about the Women's Situation Room is the involvement of the public, of the ordinary man, to understand that it's their responsibility to maintain peace and security in their countries. And we do this by also showing them the places that they can go to make complaints, the places they can go to get some resolution. The Women's Situation Room is such that we are not willing to sit down and be observers and monitors. Because when you're an observer and a monitor, yes, you are looking at things critically, you're doing a great analysis, you are seeing what is wrong in the country, you're seeing what is wrong with NEC, you're seeing all of that is in observation and monitoring. And the Women's Situation Room does that as well. Real-time resolution of conflicts in the country. And that's why you have the setting up of the call center. And I want you all to know that we will be fielding a number which is toll-free on Airtel, MTN, and all the different telephone giants that you can call on into the room during the 7 days in which we sit, and even before. And we'll be doing that very shortly. We want the ordinary man to call in. If you see the ordinary woman, and I don't want to be gender insensitive, because we certainly want women to call in. Because if you see anything that can disrupt the electoral process, whether it is the Elections Commission not having ballot boxes where there are people milling about and don't know what to do, not clear directions, whether it is some disruptive fight starting somewhere because of elections or because of political parties or political ideology, all of these things come into the Situation Room. I will tell you, in Uganda, in 2016, we did over 1,500 calls. That's to show you the participation of the Ugandan public in the Women's Situation Room and the understanding and reliance upon us to resolve these issues. And we were able to resolve over 1,500 issues. So it's important that people understand that the Situation Room is set up for that purpose. Call in, use it, because also in the Situation Room, we have the police, we have NEC, we have the military, and these different arms of the law, of security, and of electoral body management know that we are there to assist, to sit down and do nothing. They know we assist them. We're able to point out to them, you know, there are no boxes in Kololo. There are no boxes in wherever, Ginger. You need to get there to this polling station. You, the ordinary person calling in, actually are resolving issues dealing with elections in Uganda. You're not waiting for the police to come and resolve it. You're not waiting for the head of NEC to come and resolve it. By calling it into the Situation Room, there is a resolution. So I really wanted to say that and bring that to your attention. Thank you. And if you wanted any best practices, I can give you all that.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Yvette. We have about 7 minutes to close the webinar, but we have overwhelming comments that are coming in the chat. And also we have a participant who is joining on Facebook who has sent me a direct message. She is called Caroline Mukisa, who is the Executive Director of Warm Heart. She is asking that how can we actively involve women in top position in ending electoral violence? Here she's meaning women in political spaces. And also Betty Tim from the chat here in the webinar, she is saying that we need to involve persons with disability. Councillor, would you like to take on that? And as you go on,
okay.
As you can give more.
Thank you very much. How to engage, I understand the question is how to engage women in political spaces. This is very important because you will find that women in political spaces are lots of times marginalized. Really, seriously, let's be real about this. But however, those who are able to come to the forefront and We see in Uganda women at the very top of political parties, and it is their duty to ensure that there's peaceful elections. It's their duty to see that the constituents are safe. It is their duty to see that there's responsible behavior on security apparatus as well as electoral management bodies. So we engage them at the highest level. We told you that one of the things that the Situation Room does are these stakeholder meetings. And at these stakeholder meetings, we are very frank. We're not there to massage anybody's ego. We're very frank about what we see. We're very frank about what we feel needs to be done. And we say it, and we engage them, and we ask them, how can we help? And I'm telling you truthfully, we've had very good responses when we've done that. We've had responses where people are willing to come on board and are willing to do what we ask them to do, because they see themselves also as part of this mechanism. They see themselves also as wanting peace in their countries. So I think women in political spaces have that obligation to ensure that there is peace, regardless of what's going on the ground, and have to be engaged. And we in the room certainly are available to engage them, and we'll be engaging those that we've not engaged. Now, if you said you wanted me to go into our best practices and lessons learned, I think one of our best practices are our security forces in the room. In a women's situation room, we have what we call intervention desks. And in Uganda was the first actually to even come up with this concept. And I want to say that even though I'm the initiator of the women's situation room, I'm not the founder of the room. The founder of the room are the women of Africa. Because as we go from country to country, the women of Africa bring on more mechanisms which are country context to make sure that the situation room is effective in their country. Because what may be good in Liberia is not necessarily good in Uganda. So it must be done according to country context. So Uganda brought in a matter of intervention desks in the room. And this has served to cut down our timeline in which we resolve issues. So that is a great thing by having both police and army in the room. We also have the matter of the youth in the room, and they have their own room. The engagement of the young people participating in real time to resolve issues is important. So they have them to engage and be able to resolve issues in it. The post-elections mediation towards a national dialogue actually goes to our peace after elections. People think that elections, once the election is over, okay, it's done, you're the winner and that's fine. That has not been the case, as you all know. What the most troublesome time in elections is after elections, is getting the various parties to accept the results of the elections. Of the electoral process. The Constitution of Uganda and the laws of Uganda is very clear. Go to court. Go to court. Do not take people's children and put them on the streets where they are shot by the police, they become handicapped or they die and the parents lose them forever, while your children are sitting down in the UK or in the US and are safe. So that is what the room is about. Go and use the process given by the laws of Uganda and the Constitution of Uganda to deal with electoral problems. Then also we have this continuation of the post-election work with the youth. And that makes the youth more receptive to having peace in their country and being part of it. The matter of the elections mediation, which deals with issues, and that we don't brush them under the table. And that's another thing, that we know these issues will continue to crop up even after elections. So we need to deal with them. That's why the mediation, there we are again, the same issues are cropping up in Uganda again. They have not been resolved because they have not been looked at. So I don't want to take up any more time, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vet. And we have really used up all our time. It's already 12:30, 12:29, we have just a minute. However, if anyone wanted to stay on, maybe to still continue with the conversation, because we have overwhelming comments coming in. We have a hand up by Fatuma, but I would like to thank all our dear panelists, Margaret, Judy, and you, Councillor Yvette, for joining in, and also for really informing us, and our participants that have come in and with all the comments that you've given in. I do not know if you would be okay with staying in a little more time, and then we listen in from more, because this is a very important conversation. Is that okay with you, my dear panelists?
Yes, definitely.
Oh,
with
thank
me,
you.
yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, Fatuma, can you please take on the mic and we hear from you? Fatuma, you are unmuted, or I would ask Paulina, can you please unmute Fatuma? She has her hand up. We also have another hand by Mugisha Monde, who is also one of the eminent women. And I think you can now unmute your mic. Try it, please. Yes, Monde has been able. Please take, we would like to hear from you. Go on.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank our panelists, to thank Dr. Yvette Chesson for the presentation and experiences she shared, Margaret Sekaja and Judy Kamanyi, our fellow eminent women. I'm one of the eminent women for the 2021 elections. And I really thank all the panelists and the Women's Situation Room for organizing this, this discussion, because it comes at the right time where we have opportunity for the remaining 16 days or 15 days to take up the message or to continue with the message of peace. And I'm sure that those who have been listening in have got the message from the Women's Situation Room that peace is in our hands. And for us as Ugandans, each one of us has that responsibility to promote peace. We all have a stake in promoting peace. And if we all take it up and continue spreading out messages of peace, as Judy has said, we can do this by sending out messages of peace so that they reach far and wide, because that is what most people are yearning for. They are yearning for peace. Parents would like to see their children surviving this situation and seeing the peace that we are promoting. So I urge everyone who has been listening in to take this message of peace very seriously. It doesn't stop with the Situation Room. It doesn't stop in the 30 districts we are working or we have targeted. It spreads across the country that we need a peaceful elections, and we can achieve it if all of us take responsibility. So that is just what I wanted to emphasize. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monde Mugisha. And Fatuma, are you able to unmute yourself and take the mic? And then after Fatuma, we'll have Selma. Selma will go next. I don't know, Fatuma has put down her hand. I think, Selma, please, you can unmute yourself and take the mic and ask your question or give your comment.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to congratulate the Women's Situation Room for this dialogue. It was really very, very important. I would like to agree with Judy Kamanyi when she says that dialogue is very, very important. And I'm very sorry that in Uganda, we aborted the national dialogue that was taking place, because by now we would have gotten somewhere with it. But given that situation, I feel that we need to give leadership. We need to ask the women who are top in political parties and in the security forces to come together and have a dialogue within the context of the Women's Situation Room, because they need to influence their constituencies, their political parties. They need to influence the military. We need to demilitarize the electoral process, and we need women in political parties to help their constituencies to feel that if you lose, you lose. If you win, you win. There's no need for all of this violence. This is really, really critical. So it will be a kind of a mini dialogue, a female kind of dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thelma Wori. And we have Ruth Ocheng, who cannot see her mic icon, I think. Could we have Ruth Ocheng unmuted? And also, when you raise your hand, we can then know, and then the technical team can unmute you. Please, you can briefly introduce yourself, not taking so long, so that we can know who is talking to us. Thank you. Ruth, are you? Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peace. I was just letting you know from my side I couldn't, and I thought probably others were. But having got this opportunity, I really also wish to thank the panelists and all those who have contributed. I'm also a member of the Eminent Women of the Women's Situation Room 2020. And as you have heard from the comments and people who have contributed, times are very, very complex. And I would like to thank Thelma, who has brought in that idea which I had not thought of really focusing on the women leadership. If we could really go and talk to them as women in leadership, as women who are vying for these positions, as mothers, and we talk the mother language, and they cease to think only of those political positions. I saw this happening in Burundi. Their case was even more complex than ours, but the women, both leaders and peace activists, came out of their political courts and decided, why don't we just preach peace? And you know, when we talk about peace, let us unpack that word peace, because peace is behaving in a fairly manner. Peace is appreciating and respecting each other's dignity. Peace is knowing that we are all human and we make mistakes, and be apologetic of the mistakes that we make. So when we go out to talk peace, let us make people understand, if you are upholding dignity of a person, you are exercising peace. If you are respecting others' views, you are really exercising peace. Because I know most of us, because of the way the word peace has been skewed, we always think peace is about maybe silencing the gun, and peace is between the people with the gun and the people who are violating, when actually we ourselves are the people who are holding peace. And that's why the Women's Situation Room message, the key message is that peace is in our hands. So what does that mean? It means let us behave with dignity, let us value others, let us make sure that we leave people to express themselves, to hear, to be heard. It's just a matter of being heard. And lastly, to keep our egos intact, because it is the ego that makes all of us start becoming so violent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ruth, for your comments. These are very important conversations that are happening. We also still have more hands up. We have a hand from Simon, and please can we have Simon unmuted so that he can take them can take the mic. And also we have Mary Oduka, who will go next after that. Mary, you are unmuted. Mary also is one of the eminent women of the Women's Situation Room 2021 and was in 2016. Mary, please take the floor.
Thank you, Pete.
Mary, you are unmuted. Okay.
I'd like to thank all the panelists and all those who have made contributions to this webnet. It has really been a very interesting discussion and timely. I would like to reiterate what Judy mentioned, and that goes in line with what the Women's Situation Room stands for. And our motto is that peace is in our hands. And when we say peace is in our hands, we do not mean that peace is in our hands only during the electoral process, during the elections. But we believe that peace is in our hands at all times. And when Judy says that there is a civility deficit, a lack of Ubuntu Buramu, I think this is where it all starts from. Because to think that people, and particularly the young people, we as mothers, we as women, and we nurture these young people. How are we nurturing them in our homes? Are we nurturing them to be caring people, to be compassionate people at all times? Because it is unrealistic to think that they're going to be caring, they're going to be responsible, they're going to be compassionate during elections, when for the rest of their lives, they haven't been, or they haven't been mentored that way. So I'm calling upon all of us women that indeed, when we say peace is in our hands, let us start from our homes. Let us start from the beginning. How are we mentoring people in Uganda? How are we leading the people in Uganda? Is there a need for us to revisit our values and agree on what is our value as Uganda? Do we have a national value system that we can look at and say, as a Ugandan, this is what I believe in, and this is what Ubuntu Buramu is all about. So I think that program of the value system is key. We need to go back to that, and so that we can have peace, not only during elections, but peace throughout. People should be able to handle some of these challenges. I think what we're seeing now is a challenge in how people handle some of these mistrusts. Should my mistrust lead me to violence? No, I should be able to have a different mechanism of venting my mistrust, but without necessarily it ending up in violence. So I think the role and responsibilities for all, what the Women's Situation Room is calling upon Uganda, and particularly the women of Uganda, that peace is in our hands, and it is with our hands that we nurture the people of Uganda, starting from within our household. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary, for that very insightful comment. You emphasize the point that peace is in our hands. We have some comments, a comment in the chat from Fatuma. Fatuma, you failed to speak, but you put in the chat, you said, I am of the view that WSR comes in a bit late. When you look at countries like Ghana, there is a national security task force that co-opts a lot of other organizations and institutions to ensure peace before and after elections. Since we have eminent women here, why don't we push for such a functional task forces other than having a desk of police and army in the situation room? Councillor Yvette made it clear that we have these initiatives on a case-by-case basis. I believe this works in our context. Thank you very much, Fatuma. And then Simon, are you able to speak now? If you're able to speak now, you could take the mic. And then maybe I would like to invite Councillor Yvette to throw a little, to give a response to what Fatuma has just put in the chat. Simon, are you able to take the mic? Can you unmute yourself? Because you are granted permission to do that by the technical team. But if you are not able to as yet, I would like to invite Councillor Yvette to speak a little more on Fatuna's concern. Your mic is muted, Councillor Yvette.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you very much. And Fatuma, thank you also for your concerns. The reason that it's important that security forces are within the room is that we have to resolve things in real time. And this is an added benefit to the Women's Situation Room because the security forces also know that if they're in the room, they are also able to respond to things that the ordinary person on the ground is calling in as security needs. They're responding to Ugandans, ordinary Ugandans from everywhere and anywhere to say we have a security need that needs to be resolved urgently. And once it reaches the desk, I must say, and I must commend the Ugandan security forces when they were in the room, that they did respond and they responded instantly. And we got, the thing also that you must remember about the Women's Situation Room, we do immediate verification. We don't wait 2 days or a day after and then we say, okay, we verified that the police turn up or we verified that the army turn up. Let me give you an example of how this works. You call in a situation and it's something that comes into our call center. The call center, the youth in the call center takes the call, documents it, and then sends it on to the eminent women's room. It is in the eminent women's room that it is given to an eminent woman to resolve. That eminent woman makes a decision as to who should resolve it and whom to give the call to. So let's say she makes the decision that it's a police action that's needed to resolve whatever the complaint is that came in. She sends it to the police desk immediately, but she stays on top of it. She calls you to call her back and asks you, can you wait for 15 to 20 minutes as we try to resolve this where you are, where this incident is taking place, but be safe, get yourself in a safe position, and can you wait? The caller normally will say, yes, I can wait. We then send it off, the eminent woman sends it to the police intervention desk. The police intervention desk goes into action immediately and tries to resolve it. They resolve it and they come back. They write that resolution down on our form and send it back into the eminent women's room. The eminent woman who's responsible for that call gets that documentation and sees on it that the police said, we have resolved it, whether they stop the fight or intervene or whatever the case may be. The eminent woman then calls back you, the caller, and says to you, okay, we were told that people are no longer fighting, that the police are now there, that things are under control. Can you verify this? You, the caller, who had the interest of Uganda to call in, then goes ahead and you do that verification. You say to the eminent woman, either yes, it has been resolved, or no, the people are still fighting, we don't see the police anywhere. Then that eminent woman has to then take it back up with the police and go through the process again. So that is why that having the desk of the security in the Women's Situation Room is so important. That does not negate anything else that the Situation Room that is doing. Please remember, we're women. We're used to multitasking. We're not so tunnel vision that we cannot do 5 things at the same time. We can do 5 and 10 things at the same time. We can engage different people. We are women. So please remember that. We do other engagements and we do them on a continuum and we also do them simultaneously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yvette. And then we are going to close shortly. We have a comment from Elizabeth Zwanga, who is one of the eminent women of the WSR 2021 and was in 2016. Elizabeth, would you like to take the mic and give your comment? And probably we will end with your comment. Would you like to take the mic? The technical team, can we please unmute Elizabeth?
Hello.
Yes, Elizabeth.
First of all, thank you very, very much for this webinar. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, everybody who has made comments. I think this has come at a really important time for all of us with the kind of anxiety that we read in the society regarding the coming elections. People are worried about the potential of violence. Thank you, Selma, for your brilliant recommendation. And I truly believe that the WSR Uganda is going to immediately pick up on that. We need to engage with the women leaders in both the political parties and in security agencies. My gratitude in my comment was specifically to Judy and Mary for highlighting the fact that really most of our problems in Uganda today stem from the fact that we have lost our values. We lost our cultural values, and consequently we have lost really our ethics, our values, value for human life, value for society, value for having faith and, you know, appreciating ourselves as people in our communities, even in our homes. And this absence of values has led to, I am convinced, the level of mistrust, the level of doubt that exists in our society. Nobody seems to believe in anything that people say or do. And I am also convinced that if we were to take away violence in our society in the way we engage daily, we would not be worried about violence during the time when we are voting for our leaders. Violence has become a way of life in our society. We commissioned, at the Women's Situation Room, we commissioned a study on electoral violence. And one of the findings was that the society in Uganda seems to have developed a culture of violence, resorting to violence over any kind of disagreement, no matter how small or how big. So I believe we need to go back and look again for our values so that we can rebuild our society as a human society and stop worrying about all this violence that we get worried about every 5 years when we are going into elections. So we need to revive our Ubuntu Bulam, Kit Matia, Kura Matira, Ubuntu, all those, that expression exists in all of our languages. We need to revive our values. Thank you again. Thank you, WSR. Thank you, our secretariat, our communications team, for this webinar. Have a lovely day.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for that. And your comment brings us to where we'll just have a round of closing remarks from our dear panelists. And we start with Margaret Sekanja, and then we'll go with Judy, and then we'll end with Councillor Yvette, and then we will close this webinar. Please, Margaret, you can take the mic.
Thank you very much. My emphasis is on the body that leads this election, the Electoral Commission. It has a very big role to play. We talked about issues of transparency, issues of trust, and issues of dialogue. It will be very good for the Electoral Commission to always come out with a statement, with a press statement, to consult, to get people to trust the process, because it's from their words that we will be able to really know how to move forward, especially at the time of elections and releasing results and the tensions which usually exist around that time, that the Electoral Commission is in control. They must be in control. So issues of transparency, trust, and dialogue are my end of the message.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Judy, you can take the mic, please.
I just want to underscore once again the very important thing that we all need to invest our time and resources and other resources in, and that is establishing platforms for the youth to have honest and open discussions with people who don't belong to their age bracket, so that they have an opportunity to not only state what they need, but also kind of bring them to the front of participating in politics. We cannot continue ignoring the fact that 70% of the population is youth, is below, is youthful. And therefore we need to create that particular space for them. For me, I think that's the most important thing that needs to be done to reduce on the amount of violence that we're seeing in this particular country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy. And finally, Councillor Yvette, your last remarks, please.
Thank you very much. I really want to thank everybody who not only participated in this, but those of you who are doing the background work to have this webinar. And please, thank you for the excellent moderation. So pleased that we had both Judy and Margaret on, because their contribution has been tremendous. It really has. It's added to this conversation. Especially, I must commend Judy again for the matter of the youth and the recognition of the youth as being a core center of this whole matter of electoral violence. And that I think suggestion of the intergenerational dialogue is something that has to be seriously looked at and seriously ignited. Also, I'm happy to have seen that Thelma Awori came on. And Thelma, we're so happy that you could have joined. And I joined with Liz Lawanga in talking about the women in political parties to have the dialogue. As you are very much aware, Liz has been heading our mediation group in the Women's Situation Room since 2016. And she and our mediation group really did a tremendous job, and we want to commend them for that. I really want to, in terms of Margaret, thank you so much for the legal framework. That is important that people understand that the mechanisms are already existing in Uganda. The problem is the lack of implementation. The problem is the political will to utilize them. It's not that you don't have them, you have them. Your parliament has gone ahead and adopted many practices as Margaret has laid out. And that's very important. And also the matter of next stepping up to the plate and doing what Ugandan laws have already given them the authority to do, and us seeing that that is implemented. So those are important things I think as takeaways from here, to understand that it's not that Uganda is not equipped to deal with this. You are more than equipped to deal with it. It's the utilization, implementation of the mechanisms that are already existing in Uganda that will make a successful Uganda and a successful, free, fair elections without violence. We thank you. We look forward to you joining us in the Women's Situation Room. We look forward to your calls, and we look forward to moving towards a more peaceful Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yvette, and thank you all our dear panelists. We will come to an end of this webinar. Thank you all who have joined, and for all your comments and discussions, and for all the input you've made to this. We are going to have more of this conversation, definitely, and it's still also going on our different social media platforms, so you can still leave your comments, and you can follow WSR on Twitter, on Facebook, to get more information, and also to get the toll-free numbers that will be published. I think we end here, and thank you all. Have a good day, and have a happy New Year. See you in 2021. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.